We have 5 brand new precons coming in Secrets of Strixhaven, one for each of the 5 schools in enemy color combinations, and each one is looking to do something new with these color combinations, following the revitalization we saw from the original Strixhaven set. And the Prismari Artistry precon is lying to you. It wants you to believe that it's a spellslinger precon, but in reality, it's not. So let's see what it wants to do, let's see how well it does it, and let's see what we can do to make it better. The Prismari Artistry precon is deceptive, and even I was confused by it at first. See, the Prismari mechanic from the set, Opus, wants you to be casting instant and sorcery spells and getting bonus effects from casting spells of mana value 5 or greater. And while both commanders in the deck want you to cast an instant or sorcery each turn, they don't actually care too much about the mana value of those spells. So when folks were saying they already had a Spellslinger deck and wanted to avoid this precon, I wondered if they had missed that point too. The original Prismari precon, Prismari Performance, is one that I still hold to this day as an excellent Spellslinger deck, and I wondered if they would top it. And they didn't, because this is not a Spellslinger deck. This is a token deck wearing a Spellslinger deck's hat. Sure, there are some cards in the 99 using the Opus mechanic, but not, like Prismari Pianist or Leitmotif Composer, and the deck is packed with high mana value spells that discount themselves, like Treasure Cruise, Dig Through Time, or the new Fury Gale Flocking. But the point of the deck isn't necessarily to cast a lot of spells, it's to cast bigger spells. Rutha draws you in with the allure of casting big spells and making big creatures, but the synergy packed in the deck really pushes you to quality over quantity. That's not a bad thing, but it requires you to be aware of what the deck really wants to do before playing it. The default deck list comes packed with value reprints, like Fairy Mastermind and Harmonic Prodigy and Determined Iteration at 20, 15, and $10 respectively, making it a great pickup even if you're taking it apart to use across other decks. And the new lands are all fantastic adds too. Blue X lands are always valuable. The default inclusions in the list puzzled me at first, focusing more on triggers like Harmonic Prodigy or Veyran rather than the spell casting. And many triggers on the creatures in the deck list are token based like Manaform Hellkite or Stormkiln Artist. All it really took for me to clue in that this deck was a token deck is a look at the default inclusions like Curiosity Crafter, Redoubled Stormsinger, or Rionia Fire Dancer, and you start to see the matrix. Cast spells? Yes. Cast big spells? Yes. Cast lots of spells? Not necessarily. Once I wrapped my head around that, playing the deck became less about powering out lots of big spells and more about consistently casting spells, and it worked so much better. I really enjoyed playing it, and it felt unique and fun, with some incredible lines of play that were explosive with a lot of wow potential. The concept of a red-blue token deck is new to precons, but not new to the overall game of Magic. It does play very well out of the box and has loads of new cards and reprints, making it worth picking up. While there are no infinite combos in the default list, it's easy enough to turn this into a combo machine with just 2 or 3 cards added. Overall, this precon ranks high and scores an A grade from me, worth picking up and adding to your collection, playing with or without upgrades. Overall, a great deck. Let's take a deeper look into the 2 new commanders inside the Prismari Artistry precon, Rutha, Mastering the Moment, and Muddle, the Ever-Changing. Rutha makes her return, upgraded from Uncommon to Mythic, and now shifting her major from copying spells to making elementals. This 4-mana 4/4 Orc Sorcerer says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, create an XX blue and red elemental creature token with flying and haste, where X is the greatest mana value among instants and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. So basically, Rutha makes you a flying hasty beater on each of your combats, and only ever one, and only ever equal to the greatest mana value among spells you've cast so far. And I can see how this sort of plays into the Opus mechanic, rewarding you for casting bigger spells, but this only ever triggers once on your turn, not every spell cast. So it better rewards consistency in casting spells every turn, rather than casting big spells. Still, she pairs very well with anything that's free to cast, anything that discounts itself, or anything with an X in the mana value, so you can sculpt how big of an elemental you make and how much of your mana you're using every turn. There's definitely a risk-reward of whether you want to pump all of your mana into a spell in your first main phase to make the biggest attacking creature possible, leaving you shields down to interact on other people's turns. She plays great with the rest of the deck, that may copy her tokens or may double up on her trigger, resulting in some big plays where even making a 2/2 flying hasty elemental on your turn can spell big trouble for your opponents. But Rutha is not alone in this deck list. No, she's joined by Muddle the Ever-Changing, an adorable 4-mana elemental otter shapeshifter. By default, Muddle is a 3/3 but won't stay that way for long. They read, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Muddle becomes a copy of up to one target non-legendary creature you control until the end of turn, except it has Myriad. Myriad means that whenever it attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token copy that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. Then you exile the tokens at the end of combat. So here's where we can see the overlap between both commanders. They both want you to cast a spell, and they both make tokens. Muddle wants you to get even more value out of cloning your own stuff, like turning it into a Curiosity Crafter and going to town, or even turning it into a Solemn Simulacrum and ramping a few turns ahead as you get multiple enters the battlefield triggers on attack thanks to Myriad. Shifting the deck to focus on Muddle takes a bit more work, as the deck would want to be about triggering on spellcast even less, and more about enters triggers, with spells being a necessity to make Muddle matter. Overall, these two legends want the same thing: cast spells, make tokens, across almost entirely different vectors though. If you're looking at making the most of the base list, I definitely encourage Rutha to stay as the deck's commander. A hasty, evasive token every turn is incredibly reliable, where Muddle would be my pick for making an entirely fresh deck around. So if I'm upgrading the deck, cutting just 10 cards and adding in 10 cards, what am I looking at first? Well, my first move is to reduce the cards that care about quantity of spells cast. There are a few in the base list, like the original Rutha, Dance with Calamity, or Volcanic Torrent. They all care about copying spells or casting multiple spells, and that's not really what our commanders want. They want one spell cast on our turns. There's actually very little in the list that triggers on volume of spells cast, and that's ancillary to the deck's entire theme. I would also cut creative technique here as well. Free spells are great, but this is, again, where it's more about quantity over quality, and we don't particularly want to look for that in all of our synergies. We're really hoping to get lucky in spinning into something bigger than Creative Technique's 5 mana by casting it. And is that worth giving your opponents a copy to get another spin at that wheel? Plarg and Nassari are also fantastic value, but they don't play into any themes of making tokens. Sure, they may get us some free spells if they can survive until our next upkeep, but I like them better in decks that care about casting from exile or about upkeep triggers than I do in this deck about reliably casting spells and making tokens. And some big spells like Volcanic Salvo aren't really great payoffs. Yes, you could likely be casting this for just 2 mana and getting a 12 mana value trigger off of it, but is it worth hanging onto until you get maximum value? It's explosive, literally, don't get me wrong, but we want some more utility from what we're casting. I'd rather have something that refills our hands than this. I also think there are better options for board wipes at 5 mana than Aether Gale. Returning 6 permanents is good and fine and can often deal with a lot of troublesome elements in the game, but I have a straight replacement for it in Perplexing Test that can turn 5 mana into an almost entirely one-sided board wipe, and I'd do a direct swap for these two. The Test being an instant over Gale at sorcery can also lead to some game-ending blowouts where you untap, make another attacker, and go in for the win. When I got to this stage, I started struggling with cuts. A creature like Brazen Borrower could go. Sure, they're a creature, and sure, they're a spell at the same time, but they just don't do enough for me to want to keep them in the deck. It does nothing in multiples, it does nothing if we cast it on somebody else's turn, and I struggle to think of reasons to cast it as a creature in most circumstances. Then cutting Prismari Charm and Felwar Stone felt like the best next moves. I have a plan for replacing them in the deck, and since I'm relying on adding a few more creatures at lower mana values, I didn't want my early turns to get gummed up and not advancing my board state as much as they could be. Because I ideally want to be adding in more spell discounting cards. The deck has several already, from Stormcatch Mentor to Thunderclap Drake to Dirker Focus Mage, all helping to act like mana rocks for our 25 instant and sorcery spells in the deck, a full quarter of the deck. But why not also add in Goblin Electromancer? The reliability of cutting our spells down another mana means casting 6 mana spells on turn 4 reliably. That's as good as ramping in any green deck, and can set us up to be casting nearly free spells on a turn where we're also casting our commander. That's great sequencing and great value. Archmage of Runes combines the spell discounting effect with the card draw effect of an Archmage Emeritus. For 5 mana, it starts to get more expensive with a longer term payoff, refilling our hands and ensuring we, importantly, don't run out of gas as we cast at least 1 spell a turn. Also at low mana values, I want to add Young Pyromancer in the deck. Sure, it may be creating us just a single 1/1 elemental on spellcast, but it's the earliest we can start synergizing and the earliest we can start adding to our token count. With cards like Brutaclad or Mirrorwing Dragon in the default list, we really do want to be going wide outside of our commander. Now along the same theme, I'm wondering why Shark Typhoon and Metallurgic Summonings weren't considered for the default list. The whole deck is about casting 1 spell a turn and turning it into a single creature. These enchantments do that, but also create us an XX for any other instant or sorcery spell or non-creature spell too. This is a 1-to-1 overlap for our commander's effect and our incredible long-term redundancy. On the higher mana value side, Rite of the Dragon Caller can fit in too. A 6 mana enchantment, but every spell we cast makes a 5/5 flying dragon rather than an XX flying creature. It's a curve topper for the deck, for sure, but it's a heck of a lot harder to remove than Rutha and gives us a better bang for even our lower mana value spells. Since these other tokens we're creating in the set don't have haste, I want to add in at least one way to give them all haste, which is where Frostcliff Siege comes in. Flexible and versatile, we can either choose Jeskai to turn it into a draw engine when our evasive elementals connect with opponents, or we can choose Temur and give all creatures we control +1/+0, haste, and trample. Here's a hint, almost always choose Temur, it's really good. Then, my pick for card of the set from Secrets of Strixhaven, Flashback, earns a spot in the deck too. It allows us to be versatile and recast the biggest, baddest thing from our yard, giving us necessary utility and making sure we can surprise opponents as they think that we're out of options. Always keep them guessing. For 1 mana, this spell is, hands down, going to be the most played card in the most formats out of the entire set. Lastly, the most expensive card I'm going to recommend adding into the deck is Magnus the Red from the Warhammer 40,000 set. He's not the easiest to get your hands on, clocks in at around $15, but does basically everything we want him to do. On his own, he'll turn each of our tokens into a cost discount for our spells, allowing us an easy way to power out spells and make even more tokens. He acts like a plan that makes all of our other plans work better and easier. That's synergy. With this upgrade, you're less about casting multiple spells a turn and more about casting 1 high mana value spell each turn while only paying 1 to 2 mana for it. Cast the Throes of Chaos every turn by paying 1 mana and pitching a land. Cast that Abstract Performance for a single mana and reap all of the value from it. Surge to Victory for 2 mana, targeting that Magma Opus you pitched for a treasure on turn 2 gets wild. When I was fiddling with the deck, I originally wanted to cut Mirrorwing Dragon as well, until I realized that it worked well both as a removal deterrent, if an opponent wants to remove it, they would need to kill each of their own creatures, or a way for us to duplicate our entire board thanks to the Twin Flame in the base list. We target the Mirrorwing Dragon, it copies it for every creature we control, voila, you've gone wide. And that got me thinking about a muddle-focused list that cared about cloning. Of course, my favorite thing, clones. But being able to include Quantum Misalignment or Irenicus's Vile Duplication to make more muddles, then turn muddle into copies of creatures with enters effects, and then myriad each of them on attack, well, that seems really good. And Brutaclad is in the base list, which is wacky and feels great when you're turning 1/1s into the biggest elemental you've created with Rutha each combat. Brutaclad also gives all tokens haste, so really complements the enchantments that I've added that make more creatures on spellcast. And my girl Rionia is in the base list too. I had considered cutting her since she's one of the few sources in the deck that care about quantity of spells rather than quality of spells, making even more tokens the more spells you cast, but you should remember, as I should as well, that Rionia always makes at least one copy of a creature each of your combats. So if you cast a single spell, that's 2 copies of a creature at the start of your combat, which, in this list where we're casting at least 1 instant or sorcery every one of our turns, is very good. You start combining these effects to have Rutha make an elemental, then have Rionia make a couple copies of it, and then have Brutaclad make everything copies of the original elemental. A casual 10 5/5 flying hasty elementals every turn? Sounds really good to me. The deck hits all the right notes for me personally. Ample card advantage, synergy, splashy effects, and board presence that comes out of nowhere. Play this deck, you'll love it. I had a blast with it. Now I did also want to address the combo potential in the list with some expensive upgrades. And this is where Breath of Fury combos with, well, everything in the deck. As long as you can make a hasty creature each combat, Breath of Fury helps you go infinite. You attach the Breath of Fury to a creature you're able to attack with and connect with, like a flying token, and then move to combat. Effects like Rutha, Rionia, and Brutaclad can all make a token at the beginning of combat that has haste. We attack and connect with the creature enchanted with Breath of Fury, sacrifice it, and put the enchantment onto the creature we created at the beginning of combat. We then move to our extra combat, make another creature, and attack with the creature that now has Breath of Fury on it. We then repeat the cycle for infinite enters triggers, infinite combats, and ideally lets us take out all opponents as long as the creatures we create at the beginning of combat are evasive and we can ensure connect for combat damage. This has seen Breath of Fury climb to $20 in recent days, once again in the limelight, so upgrade responsibly. If you're looking for an even cheaper route to infinite combos, let me remind you of my favorite budget combo, Dualcaster Mage and any clone spell. Let's take Twin Flame that's in the base list for example, but it'll work with any clone spell that makes a hasty copy, or if any of our creatures are granted haste. You cast the Twin Flame targeting a creature you control. Hold priority and cast the Dualcaster, targeting the Twin Flame when it enters, making a copy of the Twin Flame targeting the Dualcaster that's in play. The copy resolves, making a Dualcaster, and since the original Twin Flame is still on the stack and hasn't resolved, you make a copy of the original and do this over and over again. Voila! Infinite hasty Dualcaster Mages, all for a combo where the whole thing costs you $5. And that's one of the reasons I rank this Precon so highly. Not only is it great out of the box, tight and dynamic once you acknowledge what it really wants to do, but its paths to upgrade can rocket it to bracket 3 or 4 very, very fast. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Prismari Artistry Precon, and how are you planning on upgrading it? Which Precon are you most looking forward to from the Secrets of Strixhaven set? And don't leave without checking out my sponsors like Card Conduit. They are hands down the easiest way to sell your individual Magic cards without the hassle of traditional buy listing. They'll get you top dollar while handling all of the heavy lifting, from sorting to grading to optimizing your price across a huge network of vendors. And they'll give you cold hard cash for it. You can use the promo code MECHANIC right now for 10% off of all fees. And if you want to pick up the cards for this list, make sure to go check out Card Trader. Use my promo code MECHANIC right now for 5% off your order from any TCG. Card Trader's zero system means you can get cards from all over the world with only one shipping fee. Save money and time today. Lastly, you can check out all of my decks on MOXFIELD. MOXFIELD is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build decks and search for specific cards with their powerful tools. Have you checked out their drag and drop feature yet? It's revolutionary. Be sure to check out my brews and follow my profile there right now. If you were inspired to brew today, you have to hit that subscribe button. Check out this other deck on my channel right now for more sweet tech. And as always folks, good luck and have fun.